Rise, Stories from Japan. I'm Toby.
I'm Loretta.
Thank you very much for coming. Loretta, you also known online as Kemushichan.
Yeah.
You're one of the OGs of Japan YouTube.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been 16 years in a few days, actually.
Oh my
I just
gosh.
checked that this morning. Do you remember your first video?
Oh gosh. I think my first video was about Victoria's Secret and if guys could go in comfortably talking about that. It was like a Japanese practice for me.
Yeah, and you're right. That's actually the first video.
It is?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
It's like a 5-minute video where you practice Japanese already. You already had like a really good Japanese.
Oh, thank you.
Did you study back home?
Yeah, I was really lucky. So I was able to study in high school in the States and then also online because back in the day, that video is kind of like a fossil of old because in old age YouTube, you could actually take the video and respond to someone else's video. So it was more like a video-based chat platform.
So you record your video and post it in the comments, basically.
Yeah, so like there weren't really comments. It was like video comments. So I think that was actually like a response to Tofugu, Textfugu, I think.
Oh, the website? The platform for learning
the
Japanese?
YouTube channel, way back in the day.
Back in the day.
And I just put it on there and then a lot of people started responding and like that's how you met people. Like people would keep clicking through the rabbit hole of video responses. So that was really just me practicing Japanese and it's still there.
So if we roll back a little bit, you're from New York.
Yeah.
What were you doing before you came to Japan? How did this interest start?
Okay. So before Japan, I was working in startups. I was working in tech. I was working in finance. I was working in bars. I was doing a lot of weird things, a lot of many hats. But the Japanese thing actually goes even before New York into my secret past.
Secret past
in Virginia, which is another state on the East Coast, but it's all like
connected.
It's all connected. And I went to high school and they had like this sort of starter program for different languages. And they said you have to pick an East Asian language and it has to be either Japanese, Korean, or Mandarin is what they had at the time. And I was like, well, I think Japanese is the one that's on these cards that I keep trying to read because Pokemon cards were like all the rage.
Yes,
so yes,
they were. Still are actually today. The prices are soaring. Yeah, it's crazy.
What? I should have kept mine. So the answer is anime, but it does actually go back to I started because there was like an anime store down the street and I wanted to get a part-time job there, but I couldn't. So I joined the marching band. And then there's a Japanese exchange student from Hiroshima who was like, I heard you've learned a little Japanese. I don't really speak English. Can we be friends? And
that's cool.
Yeah. And back then there was no internet. Not really. And it was like you only used Mixi to communicate in Japan. So the only way for me to actually communicate with her at that point was through written letters. So she was my pen pal. And I had to learn if I was ever going to be able to read and write.
You can't ask Google to translate it for you.
There was
you need to type it.
I didn't even think.
Write it.
Was there Google? It was like Ask Jeeves back then.
Google probably was around. I feel like Google's been around forever.
It was like a Netscape type of situation.
Oh, okay.
It was like everything was deep blue, kind of gross websites.
So you had to figure out how to write the kanji, the hiragana, the katakana.
Yeah, I was actually shocked. Like I remember stressing out over like Unicode and like being able to put certain characters on the screen and like people would obsess about how did you get your keyboard to write in Japanese? So these are the fossil days.
Questions people still have today, by the way.
Yeah, which has still not changed. IME, what are you doing? No, just kidding. Microsoft, not sponsored.
And so that pen pal is what really started the interest. You're like, oh, well, I have someone that's in Japan. I can talk to her if I just learn the language.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that fun anecdote, you're going to hear a lot of these.
Love them.
I fell out of contact with her and I was so confused. Like, why did I do something wrong? Like, what happened? Where's my friend? And I find out I posted a video maybe like 5 years ago or something where I was like, why do I speak Japanese?
Yes, I saw it while scrolling through your channel recently.
Right?
Yeah, but I didn't watch the video, but I did see.
It's basically this conversation. So you can just skip that one.
Okay.
No, just
I'll just watch it still for the views. Yeah. Leave a comment.
So it was, again, me practicing Japanese in the video. And I was telling the story of this same pen pal. And then I just said, like, kind of offhandedly, like, I lost contact and I really wish I could miss her. She inspired my journey. And, like, wherever you are, I miss you. And she reached out to me and she's like, I saw your videos. I found you on YouTube. And I'm in Tokyo right now. I was like, oh my God. And we met, and I tell you, I cried, we wept, we hugged. It was like this beautiful, like serendipity of life. And it, oh
what
my
a
God.
story.
Yeah, it was great. So if you're watching again, I still miss you. Where'd you go? No, just kidding.
Yes, in Hiroshima maybe. Or
Yeah, she might be there, but you never know.
And then what spurred the move to go all the way to Japan actually?
I think at that point it was because I was obsessed with building websites. I was in tech at the moment, and for some reason it's not enough to just work in tech. You have to also like build side projects while you're at your desk at the same time. I don't know if you know this feeling, but so I learned how to code way back in the day, again in the fossil age, and I like to just code like from scratch and just write things. And one of the things I wanted to try was a website about scholarships. So like, could it mix and match? This is before AI and all this. Like, could it just sort of help you click through really easily until you find a scholarship that will get you to Japan? Just because that was like a passion for me, is getting people cheaply to where they want to go. And while I was searching, I found one that I wanted, which is the MEXT, MEXT, the MEXT scholarship. And I was like, wait, hold on, this one's kind of nice. It is
actually pretty nice.
Yeah, I know. I was like, this one's kind of sweet. Hold on.
If you manage to get through the website.
Yeah, if you manage to get through. So the website was pretty much about as bad as the one I wrote. No, just kidding. No, no. It was definitely a little bit of hoops to jump through. But when I was just kind of fixing this up, I figured this is something I should try. So I did. And then, people out there are going to get really mad when I say this, but I didn't think it was going to happen, so I just kind of did it for fun. I just kept applying, and then boom, suddenly I just kept hitting, you're accepted, you're accepted, you're accepted. And I remember just looking at it, I was like, wait, are you kidding me? And I was like talking to my husband, who was still like, he was just my boyfriend at the time. I was like, what are we going to do? Like, this thing is kind of working, and what are we going to do with this thing? And eventually I got the email that was like, you're accepted, you need to fly out in 1 month. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like, I've got a hot, high-paying, squishy job in New York, a dog, a life here. I didn't think I was really going to move to Japan. And then my mom called and she's like, did you forget how to say yes? Say yes. I was like, oh.
Just go.
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, just go. So I think it was the people around me that made me feel brave enough.
Support.
Yeah. So that was nice.
Important, right? When you move halfway across the world, or all the way across the world from New York.
It's surreal. Like, people dream about going to Japan, living in Japan, working in Japan, but then like to actually pull the trigger, especially if you have something kind of like set up, it's so hard to really pull up those roots and actually make the jump, which I'm sure that's why you asked the question.
Yeah, it is. And the deeper your roots, the harder it is to actually approach yourself.
I've mentioned this on YouTube, but I was like, if you can go to Japan, go as soon as possible, because the longer you wait, the harder it is to convince yourself to try.
To take the risk too, because it is a risk.
It is a risk. And then for American viewers out there, or listeners, I also said, I was like, people. I was like, be very careful, make sure, because Americans are just full of like money problems. I won't get into all that. But I was basically saying, like, your student debt, like your taxes and all this stuff, like, you need to set up your money problems that are specifically American, fix them before you come to Japan, because it becomes so hard to do well abroad when you have this huge money weight holding you down.
Especially with the current exchange rate.
Oh, well, right now it actually, Yeah,
if you have to pay back a US student loan now with Japanese yen,
that's a huge point right now. At this point, your loans are like double the price, because like, oh gosh, I didn't even think about that. Oh.
Better prepare.
Ouch. Yeah. So even more so, but then I got the comment that was like, if I'm supposed to wait until my money problems are solved, but also go as soon as possible, when am I supposed to go? So there's always that risk of like now or never, really. And then just be aware of things, but just take the risk when you can.
And how did that coincide with you starting making videos on YouTube? So you just mentioned earlier, your first video was basically a response to another video, and it was your Japanese practice. Yeah.
So I think a lot of people know this, but I am very competitive, and I didn't think I was, but apparently I am. When I see someone doing something, I'm like, oh, nope, I can try that too. And in this golden age of beginner YouTube, this is when like people would just practice Japanese. There weren't people doing travel videos. People didn't, like, cameras weren't built for going outside.
No,
so
it was 2007
or so. So like what you had in your room, like your webcam or your very heavy camera, if you could afford it, like that was it.
Yeah.
So the medium that people could do was in-room content. So everybody was just sitting in front of their camera and just talking and just practicing Japanese. And I thought, well, who are these guys practicing Japanese? I practice Japanese. I can practice Japanese. So I, pulled out my nice, wonderful webcam, all 3 pixels, and, just started talking. And that was what the whole point was. Like the idea was I'm going to practice Japanese, and the feedback, like the video comments we talked about, but even the actual word comments, this is my only way to connect to Japanese people and kind of have accountability. So I'm obsessed with languages. I'm obsessed with the ability to actually practice a word the moment that you hear it, the moment that you learn it, and spit it back into the world and get feedback. And
That's how you learn it properly, right?
Yeah, for me. And YouTube was the only place that I could do that. And then over time, it kind of shifted because now that I'm in Japan, in life in Tokyo, etc., it doesn't really, it's kind of awkward to walk out in the streets and be like, "Kyou wa Tokyo ni kitemasu," hold up the camera and get the whole arm cramp in your muscles as you're practicing.
It was a big tripod, just hold it up. And
this whole
around.
Tripod and the gimbal, and just like in English, people think like, it's a YouTuber. This is what they do. But in Japanese, if you're doing it in Japanese, they're like, well, this is like, I don't know what this person's doing. So I thought maybe there's something else I could do with my channel. And it kind of naturally shifted towards more English-based content about language or English-based content about travel or about Japan. And more importantly to me, about people. People stories, people that you meet, and what can you do with language.
That's very interesting, because this morning, while preparing a little bit for welcoming you, I just scrolled through everything. And I was just looking at the evolution from the start to now. And you can really see how at the beginning you were doing those videos at home, just practicing and so on. And then you moved to Japan, you started recording some videos in Kyoto and sharing how life was there. And then it kind of grew, and then you moved to Tokyo. And then you focused a lot on language learning, sharing tips, how to practice for JLPT, how you study Japanese. Then it shifted to travel videos. And then about a year ago, you took a little bit of a break.
A break.
And then
here we are.
And that break was for good reasons. Because you welcomed a little girl. A little
buddy.
Is she still called Chacho?
Chacho, yeah. Little boss. Little boss has taken over a little segment of my life. I was able to very thankfully welcome a new team member, like we like to say. Fukushacho. Actually, we're going with Little Superman.
Little Superman.
Yeah, so we have this little unit now. We have Shacho the boss, and Superman is just otherworldly. We've got these 2 great little cuties, little people who just love to just hang out. And thankfully, they seem to be on board with all the craziness, because we've been traveling. We've been just like doing crazy amounts of things. So a lot of the people I work with, a lot of my like industry partners, clients even, have met the kids already.
Okay.
So they're just kind of like part of this weird renaissance that like we're
just
having.
Tag along for the ride.
Just tagging along. I look forward to the Thanksgiving meal when we sit down. They say, "Mom, what was that?" So
because they'll have all the footage to go back to, right?
Yeah. I should delete it real quick. No, just kidding.
So actually, this is something we really wanted to talk about today, because I saw your video that you released after the birth of your daughter, and you kind of explained a little bit how it was for you to go through the postpartum system in Japan. And well, a lot of people might be wondering, like, what is it actually like for a foreigner, especially a foreign woman, to give birth in Japan and things to prepare. So, like, overall, just as a quick introduction, like how was that experience for you, if you had to describe it shortly?
Oof. No picnic.
No picnic. Yeah.
No picnic. It was So
let's start let's start from the beginning. When in Japan, as a woman, you find out you're pregnant.
Yeah.
Is it like in the Western countries, for example, where you go to your gynecologist and confirm the pregnancy and find out how long it's been?
Yes.
Is that exactly the same?
No. So there is a huge caveat. I don't know about what people are doing, what they're doing, but some people have different paths to family life. And a lot of people I know, what counts is, and we're just gonna like dig right in, so just buckle up, everybody. Like, like what people counts is like trying for a baby or trying for a family is like they just think, we'll just see what happens, and if it happens, that's great. And then in Japan, though, I've noticed there is a real sense of timeliness to it.
Okay.
So people find out so much quicker that they're pregnant, and they try so hard to actually keep an eye on the timing of everything. Like they plan the timing of this baby needs to be born at this time. This baby needs to happen in this season. This is the exact moment of my life, and it works. So like there's a degree where everybody wants to have like, this is the time that works for me. And there's a degree of not being able to control it. But I've found that this sense of like timeliness that you see across Japan extends also to family planning.
Interesting.
So, you know, like it's like we all grew up on those anime where there's like a little anime girl in a little skirt who's like, I'm late, I'm late. And like that was a warning. That wasn't like something cute. That was a warning, like be on time. And Japan and having families here is no different, I found. And I say this because this is like a tip, a word of warning is that don't be like me and don't just like throw it to the wind and see what happens. Because I didn't know I was pregnant until I was about 4 or 5 months pregnant, depending on how you count it, Japanese or American way, which is like a good way along. It's a pretty far in. And in Japan, that doesn't really work because you need to have things set up. Like you need to have
prenatal care needs to be set up much
way
earlier.
Before then.
I see.
So in both situations, I was like yelled at by the doctors. I was like
actually yelled at.
Yeah, I was like scolded by people at City Hall. They're like, "Why'd you wait so long?" I was like, "I didn't wait. This is new."
Know.
I was like, "This is new." So and they were like, "Well, like how are you going to get the best hospital for you?" And I was like, "Well, I assume I'll walk in the front door." And they're like, "Oh no, they're booked at this point." And I started calling hospitals and realizing like these hospitals book up so fast. There's like bookings for hospitals. I was like, this isn't like Expedia. This is my life. Like, why are they booking up? It's a hospital.
It's a hospital. My idea would be, you're pregnant. You probably have a district hospital.
Yeah.
And then when you're in labor, you just
go.
Either your husband drives you there, your partner drives you there. You hop into a taxi, or you call the ambulance if you can't move. Right.
Right. I thought, what I found was in my area they were already booked.
Okay.
They were full. And if you want anything to go a certain way, like if you have any sort of preference, so for example, I want a doctor who speaks English, or I want an epidural, or I want my husband to be able to be there for all of these processes, or whatever it may be, especially during COVID. That's another caveat. Or can we say that on this podcast?
Yeah.
Okay. I also gave birth to my daughter during COVID, so that added like an extra layer of crazy unknown.
More restrictions to visitors in the hospital, like
zero.
Oh my god!
Yeah. So what I didn't realize was that I walked into it just thinking like, well, it's the miracle of life. Let's all just like celebrate it. And in Japan, it was very like regimented. Like you should have had your hospital booked by 10 weeks pregnant, which is about 2 months. So I was already about 2-3 months late to my own pregnancy. Yeah. It's like the joke. I was like, oh, okay. And then at that point, you're supposed to have all these things that you know that you want. And, that's the first tip. It's just, you got to know fast. And then you have to know what you want from a hospital before you're even pregnant. So these were things I was just not even aware of.
And nobody really tells you unless you do the research.
Yeah.
Right?
And I don't know about you, but I'm not researching pregnancy if I'm not pregnant.
Yeah.
Or like researching, like I research health things or general ideas, but like I wasn't going crazy down to the line of like, what is Japanese hospital in my area? Like, so I didn't see, but maybe there's like a City Hall,
like a booklet that explains
your specific regional something like that would be great. There is for aftercare, but I've never seen if you can see this before you're actually pregnant. But either way,
so then for your second child, you were a little bit more prepared.
Yeah, I was okay. I was
until you weren't.
Until I weren't, or until I wasn't, because again, it was kind of like another blessed surprise because, a lot of people kind of have this sort of story, but I don't know why, but doctors love to tell women, like, you're going to have a difficult time getting pregnant. I think that's just how they greet you. Mm-hmm. They're like, hello, my name is Dr. So-and-so. You're going to have a difficult time getting pregnant. Like, I don't know why. That's just what they start with. So I was just under the assumption it was just never going to happen. So the first time I was like, whoa, that's amazing. And then the second time I was like, wait, what? Are you kidding me? Because as some people will know, my babies are what's called in Japanese as toshigo. Literally is toshi, year, and ko as in child. And it means like, in English, there's kind of like a not nice term for it, but it's called Irish twins.
Irish twins.
I don't know if that's like on the verge of being canceled, probably. Mm-hmm. But the idea is that the children are born like one school year apart, almost like a ladder. And in Japan, like it's like, oh, toshigo, like you're gonna have a interesting experience. So my kids are toshigo, and I, was a little surprised at the speediness.
Yeah, he was ready to come, Superman.
He said hello.
Yeah.
But in terms of the actual processes, I knew what I was doing at that point. And I actually booked the same hospital that I did for the first time because after all that research, I did find one I did really like. And, it's kind of like you have to pick what you want. Do you want English? Do you want like private room? Do you want epidural? Do you want your husband there? Do you want good food? And yes, that's a thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of like 5 top things that people think about. And there are many more and many more important
like
as well.
As options and like bonus services.
Yeah.
So if you go back to the city hall where you were and after being scolded by both the doctors and the people working there.
Yeah.
You find that hospital.
Yeah.
And you choose them because of those criteria that
I chose them because they said that it's okay to film and it's okay to eat delicious food. So the food I had there was like lobster, foie gras, and
that sounds very fancy for a hospital
beef ribs. I know. It's like, well, the thing is in Japan, here's another difference. You're in there for about a week minimum. It's about 6 to 7 days.
Okay.
And I was like, if I'm going to live in this thing, I better eat well because I love good food. And I didn't want to have to recover physically with kind of subpar food experience. So food was up there for me. In English, I was like, I don't think I'll be saying much when the time comes. So that was down.
And you speak pretty good Japanese.
Yeah, I was kind of, honestly, I think I kind of wanted to, I was like, this is like JLPT 0. Like, can I do this in Japanese? It was like another challenge for me. And epidural is pain relief. I didn't really know much about it, so it just didn't come up on the list for me. Yeah. So anyways.
So once you decide the hospital and then you go pre-birth, you go a few times to the doctors, check if everything's all right.
Yeah.
When do you get admitted to the hospital in Japan? Is it like on the day? Do you usually know? Can you go the day before if you know baby's coming? Or?
Yeah. So here's where it starts to get different from the States. Or the West maybe. In my experience, what I understood about the States was mostly from movies, which is wrong. I thought that, you have this moment where you go, oh, my water broke, and then, oh, I'm in labor, and oh, take me away, and and then suddenly you cut to screaming in the hospital, and then beautiful baby. That's what I thought it was. In Japan, if you're lucky, that's what it is, because that is, again, not like timeliness is the priority. So there's a priority of the doctor getting the baby out safely, and the safety of you being able to give birth in a situation and not having to get caught in the grocery store in labor in these situations. So, for example, you either, if you go into spontaneous labor around 40 weeks or below or before or after, then it kind of does happen that way. If you want an epidural, there's like maybe 2 places in Tokyo specifically, that'll let you start spontaneous labor, like the whole at home, oh no, I'm in labor. And then you go to the hospital and then they give you an epidural. So that's kind of like things start naturally and then you kind of just make it easier. But in Japan, that's not normal. Really what's normal is that you schedule to have an epidural, which means you pick a date to have the baby. And no matter what's happening with your baby, whether it's ready or not, you go in on that date and it happens. It is induced. So it's a very, a lot of people talk about a lot of people talk about the epidural aspect of Japan. They say Japan doesn't use epidurals because they emphasize natural birth.
I've read about that online.
It's not true. It's not about being natural because it's not natural at all. What it actually is about timeliness and about the safety of getting the baby out when the doctor can see you. So there's a lot of, things that sort of implies for a lot of families, and especially for a lot of moms to be, it's kind of like be forewarned, is that not only will you go in on that day and be induced and then have the epidural, which may or may not work if that's what you're doing, but if your baby comes earlier than that date that you scheduled for the epidural,
it doesn't work anymore.
You don't get the epidural. It has to be on that date that you scheduled with the pain person. And then if you go later than the date, which is if you were not waiting for an epidural, if you then go later past the date, then what they do is they still try to induce you, but then without the epidural. So no matter what you're like, there's kind of like 3 options, and they all kind of really suck, to put it really blatantly.
And this is, in your experience, and basically really due on the timeliness that they really want to pick the day the baby is born, and not let the body do its natural thing of when the baby is ready, it's coming out.
Yeah, basically. So, body, it's kind of frustrating because you hear this narrative of like, your body knows what to do, trust your body. And you don't really get the chance to do that. It's more like trust the doctor, and then your body is what it felt, is my impression in both times. And so my first hospital was kind of like a glitzy glam, like birth center. And then because of just a couple different complications with the second pregnancy, I actually had to go to like a big university hospital for my son for the second pregnancy. Okay. So I've seen like these kind of streamlined clinics, and then a really old like Showa era like hospital
with
experience.
Blinking lights and
almost it was like, wow, okay, this is like, I'm ready for my memoir. I had like my paper and pen ready. It's like, we're never gonna forget this one. But yeah, so I have seen kind of both ends of it, and in both cases it was still the same, that like the emphasis is on making sure that you're able to get the baby out while there's mostly staff available, which is between 9 and 5, which to me sounds outrageous. That's actually the reason why I didn't go for an epidural, because when they told me that it had to be scheduled for the doctor between 9 and 5, I was furious.
So if the baby's coming at 5:30,
no baby's born between the hours of 9 and 5. Every baby is born at like 3 a.m. in the middle of a ditch. No, just kidding. No, but it's always a crazy story. Nobody has a nice, sweet, like, I went to work, wiped my brow, and decided today's the day. Like, nobody has a smooth, and that's one thing you have to remember, and that I've learned, is that you can try to control things to a certain point, but you almost never get the birth experience that you wanted. Like, it's pretty much, you really can't. And I'm almost glad that we're talking now after I've had the second kid, because with the first one, I was so mad. Like, I wanted to make a second video about all the bad things that happened, but I was so mad about it. I was like, I don't know if I can really talk about this in a way that's not just me like screaming. So I kind of waited and kept things to myself.
And here we are. Now
here we are.
It all out.
No, just kidding. No, and so now I've kind of processed, and now that I've seen like another version of it, I'm like, no, there's still a lot of patterns. So yeah, timeliness is huge, and no epidurals is huge because of timeliness. And then, but
So what happens once you get admitted to the hospital? Everything is planned, the days are fixed, you're through all those steps. And you arrive at the hospital. You probably packed a few things if you were prepared in advance, and then...
So they put you in you get to the hospital, you get dressed in like a cute gown that is like branded with their hospital thing. And
branded, of course, because it's a hospital.
Of course. And then you basically go into a pre-labor room. And then later on you end up in the delivery room. And this is if it's spontaneous. So if you were in the taxi or whatever to the hospital, if you had planned and you had like an epidural, or if you're being induced, which is another planned thing, then you go in and then you change into a branded. Yeah, it's about the same, but
yeah, quite similar.
But I would say, like, right here, for anybody who's listening, for anybody who's a mom, I would Google. There are a lot of blogs from moms in Japan who talk about the actual day of like being induced or the day of getting the epidural, I would read those.
There's a lot of different experiences, right? It's
Yeah.
a very personal.
Yeah, it's very personal, but I would read it because one of the things I like wanted to make sure I brought to the table today was that a lot of people think that Japan's really big on like natural birth and you know, timeliness, but actually what I've noticed is that it's not natural at all. There's a lot of importing that happened. Like there's recently specifically, there's a lot of importing of processes and tools and mechanisms that induce labor or make it happen faster. So Pitocin is a drug that most people dread and know. It's like, it's an IV drip that you don't want unless you need it. And then there's, you know, other things that people use. It's called like, you know, there's other things that are used to like manually dilate the situation, which basically just means like open things up so baby comes out. So, and these are all important because baby doesn't come out if things don't come out. But the thing is that all of these sort of new innovations to induce labor and to induce it in a sort of healthful way, they're basically like sports cars. Like they're crazy, but like they have great function, but they require so much maintenance. They require, you know, like a good handyman. And nobody in Japan read the manual right, is the way I've seen it. It seems like people imported these sports cars that like just drive the baby out of you, but they didn't install seatbelts. So there's no painkillers, there's no kind of like mental support, there's a low emphasis on how can we make this sort of like an easier situation. And I don't just mean the epidural. Like there's other methods that if you're going to use, for example, like if you're going to induce the whole labor process, then using like gas or like aroma or massage or sitting in a different situation. Like you shouldn't you should never give birth on your back if you don't have to. That's one of the most painful ways and the slowest ways to do it. And everyone thinks you're supposed to be sitting on your back. That's what doctors want you to think because that's the easiest way for them to help you out. But in terms of quick, easy processes, anything but on your back is better for the mom and for the whole process. And in Japan, they want you like strapped down, your legs strapped in for hours on your back, no painkillers.
So all you can wish for is a quick delivery.
Is like quick, yeah. So that was kind of like my biggest shock was I was like, how are they so willing to, it's not natural at all. It's like, why are we so willing to import all of these sort of innovations to make the baby come, but nothing to make it.
Not the structure.
Yeah, not the structure. There's no ease. There's no, support. So it actually, this is why I didn't make a video for like a year because it just became so traumatizing. And I actually had a pretty easy time of it in terms of how easy as it can go. So I was just like, oh my God, like that
really? Yeah,
really? That's the best we're going to work with. So I think that the medical industry is probably one of the slowest innovating industries in Japan right now, other than like banking. But it's just like, it's really unfortunate because there's actually all these sort of new initiatives to help people have families, new initiatives to send funding and money to like families to start and to start what they're trying to, but it's not the money per se. It is, money is a big piece of it.
We'll get to it later for sure.
Yeah, like money is a big piece of it, but like you can't, throw these moms under the bus and then expect them to do it again and wonder why people are only having one kid. So
what you said is quite interesting because what I picked up from everything you said so far, it seems a lot is done on your behalf.
Yeah.
So you basically were told you have to choose your hospital, and then when you get there, you have to pre-plan all the procedures you want, and when you arrive, you're a patient.
Yeah.
And they put you through a step-by-step process.
Yeah.
But for you as a mom-to-be, it's the birth of your child. It's a unique moment in your life, and that lets me wonder, like, what is the actual human relation? How is the staff that you're working with? Do they really treat you like a patient as well? Or is there like a kind of understanding of you're about to give birth and they want to be here for you and kind of help you go through the process? Because as a midwife or birth doctor, they do a lot. So they know what's coming, what's happening.
Yeah.
Right?
You would hope they'd give you a helping hand, right? Literally.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I found that the midwives or the actual like nurses on staff, they're lifesavers. They're actually amazing, like gung-ho women, and you don't realize it, but birth is a full contact, like a full body contact
you go
sport.
Through
it's like
wrestle, or
it's like American football. Like you are going to tackle your way through the line until you make it to the other side. And these midwives and these nurses are actually in your corner. They're the ones who actually. So little side anecdote: I never took any birth classes. I never did any of these sort of like things to prepare because I just didn't have time. And I was so worried, like, is this going to go okay? Like, I'm just going to run in there natural and just
see what happens.
Oh God. And the nurses were actually like, they literally held my hand and they literally were like, you're breathing wrong. If you don't breathe like that, you will scream. So breathe like this. So it was like, oh, okay. So I very quickly kind of found something that worked for me. And the nurses were just lifesavers, actually, literally. And the doctors, on the other hand, like there's usually a head doctor. Is very weird. If you go to a very small clinic, you tend to have the same doctor. But in these sort of like university hospitals, bigger hospitals, you usually don't see the same doctor.
You get whoever is on call right now.
Yeah, like whoever is there at the moment, or even for like your visits, prenatal visits, sometimes you'll rotate between doctors. So I had a really hard time with that. Like every 2 weeks or so, I'm sitting here, legs up for a whole new person. It's like, this is weird, guys. Like,
you want to have a familiar face.
Yeah, and in Japan, I don't know if you've ever seen this situation, but they put curtains between you and the doctor when they're digging around and under the hood. So I don't know about you, but when someone's getting that intimate, I need to see the whites of your eyes. Like, I need you to look me in the eye.
You can trust the person.
Yeah, it's like, what are you hiding for? Like, you need to look me right in the eye, and I need to see what you're doing before you do anything weird. So that was always a weird thing for me, is that they put you on these like animatronic Disney ride chairs that shove you through a curtain where you don't know who's on the other side, which is always fun. And then the doctors are different, and you're like, who is it? But then, at the end, this was another shocking point for me. The doctor who actually like delivers your baby, like catches the baby at the end.
Mid-flight?
No, so he's like, I got it. That doctor usually wasn't there for a lot of the actual labor process anyways. So it's really the nurses.
They're really there to help.
Yeah. Oh, and they're there for you. So there was definitely that human element. And I was very grateful for that. Like, hopefully nobody ever has to go through this. But when I gave birth through COVID, there was no husband, and because it was at night, because that's what babies do. There was one nurse in the entire birth clinic, and there was at least 3 moms when I got in there. So we're all just like going at it.
Who's coming first?
Who's going to go first? Who's going to go first? And there's just this one, bless her soul, but this one lady who was just running in between us, trying to take care of all of us. So the majority of my labor was just alone in a room, me like squeezing the button, like, hello, who's there? But, that being said, she was still like the best. She still was the best.
Did you have a similar experience in both the public hospital and the private clinic in terms of the staff?
It was a lot more staff. So the big university clinics, you'll know, is that the whole point of these big university clinics they're the big ones. This is where you go if something really goes wrong, or like if even my first birth clinic, if something went wrong mid-process, this is where I would have ended up anyways. So this is like they have all of the machinery and the sports cars and and all that. And but there was a lot more nurses there. I want to say maybe like 20.
That's quite a big difference.
Yeah.
20 to 1 there.
20 to 1. It was definitely like a big difference. And it was really sweet because I got really lucky with my doctor. I had a male doctor who was the first one was kind of old, a little antiquated. And the new doctor, the second doctor, he was very young, but he was very knowledgeable. Like, at first I didn't trust him because he was so young. I was thinking, who's this guy? He might be younger than me. I don't know what he knows.
Yeah.
But he was just running in doing surgeries. He's like, oh, so sorry. I just got back from a surgery. He's like, you're doing surgeries? Wow. Okay. This is not just like, whatever. This is a guy who's still on the field every day. And he was really nice. And when things were kind of getting really weird, really awkward for like a moment during my labor process, he very quickly was like, this is not working for you. We're going to change the script. We're going to find something that works for you because this isn't it. And I was like, wow, like somebody who actually was
taking charge.
Yeah. So there are good stories out there, but you don't really know what you're working with until you get towards the very end, which is why it's so important at the beginning, if you can, to ask like, what happens if the baby doesn't come, or what happens if I get sick, or what happens if, etc. So think of your experience at the hospital as like a job interview. You want to know who it is that you're going to be working with.
Yeah, you're trusting them with your life and the baby's life.
Truly.
Right? Yeah.
So like ask as many questions as possible.
And you did all of that in Japanese?
Yeah. Well, there were a few expletives in English, a few four-letter words, definitely in English.
They came out naturally?
Those are natural words that happened. A few English lessons were given.
Did you find that it was difficult from a Japanese level, Japanese language perspective, to keep up with what the staff was saying in terms of their directives? Or if you wanted to ask a question because you might be like, oh, I don't know what's happening. Is this normal?
Yeah.
Or was it kind of an advanced level of Japanese for which you may recommend someone who's not too comfortable to try to find some clinic that does it in English?
I would say find the hospital that you want, and then find a doula. So that DOULA. I didn't know what this word was until this process as well, but a doula or someone who can act as like a translator for you. And these hospitals, sometimes they have translators, but really if you can, you want to bring someone of your own that you trust, because it's just better that way. I found that even though I spoke Japanese, and I think at a relatively high level, there's just so much new, like medical Japanese, birth Japanese, and then people have nicknames for things. Like you go and saying like, oh, my hoo-ha is burning. Is this the baby? And they're like, well, it's not your hoo-ha, it's your, like there's all these funny words that you start learning very quickly. Like even the word for like miruku, I thought that was the word for like milk. And they're like, no, miruku is the word for like formula only. And I was like, oh. Okay, there's multiple milks in Japanese, but anyways, so like there's a lot that you have to learn in Japanese, and I found that keeping a notepad in paper works for me. Yes, like notes on your phone are nice, but the doctors, they move so quickly that if they say something you don't understand, like ask them to write it down and then look it up with like a Google image.
After, so you can double check.
Yeah, so you can double check, because for bigger processes, they will give you a consent form so you can kind of look it over. But there's a lot of talk that they'll just say on the spot that you're just like, what? Why do you look so angry? What's going on? What's going on?
Did I do something wrong?
Is there something wrong? So, keep notes with you. And another thing I would definitely say is try to do some pre-research, certain words of like worst case scenarios. So like you should know like organs and things like that. But when you become pregnant and you register it at your city hall, they give you a booklet called like a boshitecho, a mom book. And at the back of this boshitecho, they have this like Wiktionary of easy words. So they should have this for everything. Like you should have like a taxes, like when you pay taxes in Japan, like they should have one of those for that. They should have
for every procedure,
for everything.
It would help a lot of people.
Why haven't they done this? But yeah, so I found even so that the words were still kind of hard to keep up with. So
better to prepare, and if you really don't feel comfortable, to kind of find somebody that can help as a translator.
Yeah. I would say one culture shock, though, is that I think something like being treated uniquely as an American woman, I was really worried how people would treat me. I found that people were kind of hesitant to share information. Like they thought maybe I didn't understand, therefore they didn't need to say anything.
Interesting.
And in general, doctors tend to kind of hold back information if they don't have to tell you too much, just because it's like, don't want to worry you. But
you have a right to know.
Yeah, you have a right to know. And in the world of OBGYN, the world of like family planning and whatnot, you really need to know what they're saying. And I find that doctors really don't want to tell you much at all.
So you have to pull it out of them.
Literally. I was like, it's going to be me pulling it out this time. No, I'm just kidding. So I found that I would look up words for like, okay, this is the word for like induction, or this is the word for like this drug, or this is a word for like episiotomy or epidural, or just heart rate, like things like that. Like there were things where like I had never heard my baby's heart rate through the entire first pregnancy. And I was like, can I hear my baby's heart
They don't like show you sound. Like I feel like I grew up in France. I feel like it's normal when you do the echography and so on. It's like, oh, here, listen to your baby.
There's the heartbeat, and that was like the first. I was like, "Where's hello?" And eventually, I was like, "I don't know the word for like, can I hear the heartbeat?" So I remember like awkwardly being like, "Ano shinzo no oto nagashite kudasai." They're like, "What?" I was like, "Play the sound." They're just like, "What?" I was like,
"Just play it,
play it for me." And then, and then you look things up afterwards. But I found that I would be the one to initiate things. Like I would say, "So, is there a painkiller in this situation?" They're like, "Oh, no." Most people don't ask that question. No.
And I was just like, deal with it.
I know. It's like, oh, okay. And then, but it wouldn't stop there. Then I would have a follow-up question. Like, so in this situation, if I want to, for example, call my husband into the room, or if I want to do this, can I do that? They're like, oh,
people don't usually do that.
No, the answer is no. No. But they were surprised by the amount of follow-up questions I had. Like I walked in almost every time with a list beforehand of things that worried me, therefore questions I would ask.
Yeah, you came prepared.
Yeah, and they every time were so shocked that I was like, so what's your policy on this?
So Japanese moms will usually just give their full trust to the medical team to just do the procedures as I usually do, and that's just how it's done.
From other moms I talked to, a lot of people said something similar, that they basically just kind of trusted that the doctor knew best and that it's supposed to hurt, it's supposed to be scary, you just kind of make it happen. And I was like, yeah, it doesn't work for me. Like,
you want to know.
I want to know. Yeah. So it was a big Japanese lesson.
How was it after birth? So your child arrived.
What a question.
Safe and sound.
Yeah.
And you go to your room after labor. Do you get to hold your child right away in Japan? Or?
So this is different. This was another thing that shocked me, is that in the States they talk about skin to skin. That first moment when the baby's born and they put the baby on you, and like it may crawl up your chest, or like it may like just kind of snuggle up against you. But it's they say that these first few moments with your child are the most important to like health and bonding and circulation and stuff. Okay. Like the warmth of the bodies. And I've never had that. I have never ever experienced that in Japan. And I had
on both birth.
And both. And I remember I was expecting that to happen and just went through this crazy trauma. And I remember just being like, okay, the baby's out, did it. I'm ready for my skin to skin. And
give it to me.
No, and they're like, here, we'll take some photos of the baby. And they just left and took the baby. And I was like, okay, they'll take some good photos. And then they brought in lunch. I was like, okay, I'm going to eat. I'm so hungry. Okay, where's my baby? Yeah. And then I just kept waiting. And I was so hungry that I was just focused on food for a second. But then I was like, wait, where's my baby? And then I kept like waiting. And finally I like pressed the nurse button. I was like, where is my baby? Like, I haven't seen this baby yet. Like they held it up like Simba at the beginning, but like that was it. And then they brought the baby into the room and they're like, the baby's over there. And I remember the first, like with my daughter, the first 2-3 hours or something, I just watched her from across the room, but I had never touched her yet. And I was like, can I touch
my baby?
My baby? Like, are you kidding me? And I don't know what came up. Well, I know what came over me. It was probably mother's instinct. I got up from the chair and kind of like ran at her the moment the nurses left the room because I was starting to get a weird feeling and I was like, something's off. So I got up and just like ran at her. And I forgot, you don't stand up after you have a baby.
No.
I immediately fainted and all like the IV, everything just crashed. I crashed and like everything fell out of me. I was like bleeding out of the IV. I was like, sorry if people are like afraid of gore, but like I was completely like, oh my gosh, like
what did I do?
What did I just do? And then they're like, what's the problem, miss? I was like, my baby, give me my baby. So finally they let me hold the baby. But then that was kind of it for the first day. And then I had a full day of just like me just in the room eating. So I was like, where's my baby?
So you don't immediately spend time with your child?
Like maybe some places do, but it was not. For the first, it was really weird that way. And then with the second one, I remember there was so the second baby came in 54 minutes. It took like 3 days to get things going, but once things actually started going, it was really quick.
I'm ready to go. Like I finished preparing.
No, truly, it's like boom. And I'm talking about like from the moment things started until like baby in hands was literally 54 minutes. That's not a long time. If I had been waiting to book a cab or waiting to pack a bag, the baby would have been born in the genkan, like literally. So the second baby came, and there was like this whole group of people and doctors, because it was coming so fast, they're a little bit worried. And there's just a crowd of like 20, 30 people in like this birth theater. And I remember they just took the baby. They're like, okay, we got him. And they held him up like Simba. Here he is. They held him like Simba across the room. And I remember I just like gave him like a high five, because he just started showering all of them with pee. I was like, my boy, you get him. You show him. And then I immediately was like, let me see my baby. And they, let me hold him.
Okay.
But it was
so it's quite different, right?
I was like, I have to ask to see my own baby. But anyways, yeah.
And you said earlier in our conversation that you stayed there for like a solid week.
Yeah.
But
the second baby for almost 10 days. It was a long, anyways, different story.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
Because in some other countries you may stay a couple of days, 3 days, and be out.
I'm still shocked. Like my friends back home, they have babies, and within 24 hours or so, they're posting, "We're home." Like, you're home. What?
Is that safe?
What? I don't know, because like with my first baby, other than falling, I was generally kind of okay. But with my second baby, because he came so fast, which is like the smallest of complications, I couldn't walk for like at least a day. So I was like, I can't imagine just being like, all right, good luck, goodbye. Like
hopping into the next taxi.
Just like, hey, taxi, let's go. Like, and I certainly couldn't sit by any means. So I was like, I can't believe that you think about your own country when you have these experiences. You're like, what are they doing back there? So this was one of the moments where I was like, okay, this is where I think Japan has a better idea. 7 to 10 days is ridiculously long. I want to say by day 3 or 4, I was very ready to leave.
Yeah, you're like, I've had enough hospital time.
I was like, goodbye. Honestly,
like, no, you stay here.
You stay. I think with the first baby, I was okay to stay because the food was so good and because there was a massage
the
therapist.
Lobster, the foie gras.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not going anywhere. But you get a lot of emphasis on recovery in Japan. And that is nice, because once you get home, it's all gloves are off.
Yeah. It's your time to take care of everything. So 1 week in hospital, not too long after all. Like on second thought, is like you may want to leave earlier, but you're glad that you have it. And
yeah, but then, and then another kind of culture shock. The nice thing about Japan is that there are so many postnatal services. So you may leave the hospital within a week, but there's still, like, the city will offer you money. And then, in Tokyo, I don't know about all Japan, but like...
It's probably different city by city, but I would assume that considering the government policy is to encourage childbirth, right now, most cities may be providing some kind of financial help.
There's like a gift program that started, I think, around COVID, but like basically they give you about $1,000 just for things you may need for the baby. So like diapers, etc. But also
the cost adds up.
Yeah,
it's a human being.
It does, but also it's like for home electronics. Like if you need a new rice cooker, a new vacuum, a new Roomba, whatever.
Massage chair for
a massage chair. No, they're really great about that, but they're also great about postnatal help in terms of people. Like right now, we have it's like a housekeeper cook lady who just stays with you, and it's really just like a friend. It's like a lady who's maybe 5 years older than you, and you just like, they're your friend. They're there with you. And
so they're coming out, they help you cook, they help you clean, take care of the baby.
And I don't think the Western community is so aware of this service because it's something you have to sit at the city hall and ask about, and it's different in every city. But almost every city has a service. It's called Sango Herupa. So like afterbirth helper, Sango Herupa. And they're kind of like hit and miss sometimes, but they're usually pretty good. And in Tokyo, I've seen that they're trying to expand this service beyond just like cooking and cleaning. Like around me, they've expanded it that they can go with you to the doctor.
Okay.
They can help you go grocery shopping or do it for you. And they can also do this for you up until your baby's age 2. So most of these places, you can get help for about 3 months. But up until age 2 is like, whoa, now that's fancy. So
yeah, it's a nice thing to have.
That's really nice, and I wouldn't get that in the States. So these are like, it's after the baby arrives is when the perks really start to roll in. So I like that.
Is there any mental health support as well? I know that some women have postpartum depression, and have challenges kind of getting through that. Is there a discussion around this? Are there points of contact where you can just seek advice or someone to talk to?
Places are getting better. They, the city has a lot of services where somebody will come back to you a month later to like see how you're doing. They will have like a health center near you that'll ask you how you're doing. And there are opportunities to sort of like, let's say, for example, you go home, you realize you're overwhelmed. You can go back like to a, what do you call it? Like a postpartum hotel, basically. And you can stay with a nurse. And like, you basically can always have a midwife come and give you help or advice, or you can go to them and bring the baby. One thing I did notice is that when you leave the hospital or when you're in the hospital, they very quickly gave you a mental health exam. They actually do this in the hospital, but they kind of encourage you not to be truthful because
they encourage you to lie.
Yes.
Because they don't want to deal with the answers.
It's because the answers will get you in trouble.
Oh, so they will, if I may make an assumption, if you answer that you have some mental health challenges, they might assume you're unfit to be the mother.
So I remember the first time, because it was COVID and it was terrible. And I remember I was missing my mom, the borders were closed, I was missing my husband, the hospital's doors were closed, he couldn't come in for the whole week. Like, it was just me alone with this baby. I was wondering, like, how did I get here? I was like a career woman with the IT and all that. And suddenly I'm just sitting here with this crying sound every 20 minutes. It's like making my brain crazy. And it's like, so I wrote that in the report. I didn't want to lie. I thought, well, I did the darn thing. I should be truthful about how I feel. And I felt pretty terrible. So I wrote that. I said, this is how I feel about the situation and where I am. And I remember 2 nurses came in with like another person in a whole different outfit. I was like, oh, who's that? And they're like, we just wanted to talk to you. I was like, okay, hi. That's great.
Let's have a talk.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, let's talk. And then they basically said, we want to make sure that your situation is okay, because if this is actually how you feel, then we need to report you, and we need to report you as like an at-risk mother. And I was like,
wait a second.
What? So then I talked with them and was like, well, because of COVID, or because I'm from abroad, or because I'm not Japanese. Like, we kind of like framed everything, but I was like, I didn't like that. I basically, like, those are my valid feelings, and I felt like I had to make them look nice so that I didn't get in trouble.
Do you know what would happen if they report you to as a at-risk mother?
I can't remember exactly what they said, but I think it was something along the lines of they would report it to the city hall, and then that would make it like a child services situation might need to intervene and like check in on the home constantly.
And then you might have them on your back for like 2 years until you like cleared all the points.
Yeah. Well, I've heard like worst case scenarios where like the child was taken out of the home, but like I don't think that's what they were after. But it was just like, whoa, okay, that was even more like, that was a shock too. It's like, wow, I don't feel like I can talk to you guys at all because now you're gonna take the baby. It's like, it's not that hard of a time, gosh. But
so postpartum depression it doesn't seem like they are really. There's like support, but if you really actually struggle, they might put you more in this kind of at-risk category instead of that's a normal thing that can happen to mothers after birth, and let's just give them a framework to feel supported and like get through this.
Like they gave kind of frameworks of like what to do in the home or like what services to reach out for help, but there wasn't a lot of like, I don't know. It just didn't seem like there was a lot of things that you could, if you were really in trouble, it didn't feel like it was something that would actually help. So that was kind of a weird point. And, but I will say that in terms of like nomenclature, there is a word for like postpartum depression. Like they'll say like mazabru, like the mother blues. And there's
Blues is a nice turn on depression.
I know. I was like, oh, they went for a nice little word, which is interesting. But there are actually words for these concepts in Japan, which is already kind of a good sign, because sometimes they don't even have words for things that you expect to talk about. So at least you don't have to explain like, this is where I'm at. But hopefully if somebody does need the help that they can get it. I would say probably the city is a better resource than the hospital for
So
sure.
don't devolve to the hospital. Take home if you have a partner that's there to support you, and then find like a specialist maybe that can independently.
Yeah. And I would say it's, if you're an international mom or if you're not from Japan, like it's so easy to get kind of bogged down and lonely because, you know, you're not in your home. One thing I found, for example, was like joining other moms in like jidokan. Jidokan literally means like child hall. So it's like free play halls. It's like a library for play. So this is where you can go for free any day of the weekdays usually, and you can just bring your child, and there are people there all the time. They have like slices of watermelon in the summer and like toys and like, yeah, it's like 4 or 5 what is it called, like level buildings and like gymnasiums where they just encourage children to play. And that's just like, you meet so many people there and everybody just wants to talk, so you make mom friends really quick no matter how much Japanese you speak. It's just kind of like
everyone's bonding over just having a new child.
Yeah, and it's just a good way to kind of get out of that mazaburu, because then you're seeing other faces and other peers. So
can share experiences.
Yeah, I would say jidokan are great and they're free. I love free. That's amazing. And there is something else that's helpful, but yeah, the city hall and jidokan are like great resources.
So talking about resources, and also maybe a question that many foreign mothers may have is, what does it all cost? Right? Because you said usually in Japan, you have to go see the doctor from week 10. So then you need to see them regularly. So you have to pay for the doctor visits, and then you have the hospital stay. And like you said, it can be 7 to 10 days.
Yeah.
Now, if I think 7 to 10 days in the United States, I'm thinking I'm broke.
You're thinking you're broke for life.
But if I'm thinking Japan, how is it like, and how much can you actually get in terms of support and help, maybe from the government, from your city, from your prefecture?
Yeah, so it definitely, let's say, so it's different because in Japan, birth and pregnancy aren't considered a medical
procedure.
Like, how do you say it? Like condition?
Okay.
It's considered something you elected to do. So you don't get insurance to cover it. Is the
so
point
it's not like you catch the flu and that kind of falls upon you. It's like you choose to. You chose to,
therefore you pay, is the idea. But at the same time, the city then will pay you like a stipend because they're really like, everybody's got to have babies, is where Japan is. And so that cost of the actual labor and stay, for example, that'll be about what are we talking, dollars? Yen?
We can say yen, and we can change to dollars after.
Okay. So, oh God, what is it in yen? I'm gonna say dollars.
Yes, say dollars.
Okay, so it's about somewhere between like $4,000 or $5,000.
So like 700,000 yen ish.
Something like that. It's like, hold on. No, okay. So let me backtrack it. A yen would be then
700,000 yen, right? 70만.
You'll get about 40, 50만.
Also, then like $2,000 to $3,000.
So okay, so the current yen rate's not helping this story very much, but so it's in the realm of like 40, 50만 is what you'd get, and you don't have to like get the money. You can have the hospital like go and get it for you. So you go in, and then the actual birth will cost about like maybe somewhere around there, if not less. And then I walked out both times with a refund. Like they're like, "Oh, you forgot your money here. Like, just like take your money.
Take it back.
take your money back."
So you go in and you fill a form that basically automatically applies you for this kind of stipend from the city, and then the hospital will deal with the city to cover the cost, and you don't need to do anything.
Yeah.
And then if what the city gives is too much compared to the procedures that you've actually had,
then you give
you the refund.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's nice. The only thing is that the appointments up until that point are not free. You do get like a book of coupons, but you can usually spend about like 40 to, here go dollars again. Yonsen, about like
4,000 yen, so $30.
So about 4,000 yen to about ichiman, to about
$80.
Yeah.
10,000 yen.
About 10,000 yen. Yeah. You'll spend that about each appointment every 2 to 4 weeks.
Every 2 to 4 weeks. That's quite frequent, right?
You go in pretty often, and which is another thing.
So that adds up.
It adds up. So yeah, but there are coupons, but it's still, I found I was constantly like opening my wallet. But the thing is, once the baby's actually born, they have free insurance for a very long time. I'm
So
forgetting.
free medical insurance for
Free
the
medical.
child until they are like in the teenage years.
Yeah. So, and then they're able to just, use that for a long time. So I really appreciate that, because my second child has a couple things where we have to go back to the doctor just to check up pretty often. So just knowing that that's free, whereas like I've talked to my mom friends who had like a similar situation, they're just like out of pocket. Like if if you find out your baby like burps too often, you're constantly going in to check that, those burps are costing, that's like dollars like every day. So
my God.
So it's very relieving to know that you don't have to break the bank just to break the rest of it.
What a way to phrase it. Do you have any other like kind of financial support post-birth?
Yeah.
Where the city kind of helps you with covering living costs? You mentioned the helper that comes.
Yeah, there's the helper that comes. There's the kind of gift system, especially in Tokyo, where they'll give you about juman, 100,000 yen, about for just like home appliances. And then there's also jido teate, which is like
one-on-one kind of.
It's jido is in child.
Automatic.
What is teate? Teate is like a stipend. It's like a child stipend, and that'll come in every 3 months, but it's supposed to cover monthly expenses of about
50,000 yen.
You'll get
30,000 yen.
like math. You'll get about 30,000 yen
To
per
spend per
child
month.
every 3 months or so.
So like 10,000 yen per month per child.
Yes.
Ish.
And that's supposed to cover like diapers or like formula or something like that.
Which is miruku.
Which is miruku.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I just like say one little like thing out there?
Please do.
Okay. So I wrote on that video saying that I had the baby, and I was like talking about the word for milk, and I was like, yeah, and the word for like miruku is formula, but the fancy or like the like college educated way to say like feed your baby is junyu suru. And I got so many comments from people who are like, wrong. JLBT one for nothing. It's not junyu, it's gyunyu. Gyunyu is the word for milk. And it's like, no.
Junyu is breast.
No, I know. It's like junyu is actually like providing the milk. Like it's ju like ukeru and yu as in milk. Like it's actually like breastfeeding or even just like feeding. But like gyunyu is cow's milk.
Yeah.
Nobody's drinking cow's milk at this point. I was like, it's not gyunyu. Okay, it's junyu. And anyways, so I was just like these words, I remember all these words are like flopping around in my head for so long. It's just like, yeah, milk. Everything's milk.
Everything is miruku.
Everything is miruku. My home helper was like, everyday miruku bar. I was like, yeah, everyday milk bar is like, I need a t-shirt. But yeah, there's good resources, but it generally covers like daily like diapers.
It helps a little bit, but you still have to plan for that.
Yeah. And then, the hardest part is like paying for your lifestyle, because usually in Japan, if you have a baby, that kind of knocks you out of the workplace pretty easily, because, first of all, the paternity leave looks so good if you do manage to get it.
Yeah.
But a lot of what happens is that if you're out of your work, if you're out of your job for so long, it's kind of hard to get back in. Or what I found more common is that, and I'm just like taking the whole subject, I hope you don't mind, I just took it. Another big kind of pain point I've noticed is that if you don't find a child care option for your kid, so let's say, for example, me, I have a job, I get pregnant, I have said baby, and then when I'm feeling good, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go back to work. Who's going to watch the baby? I don't have a parent here. I don't have somebody else I can leave the baby with. It has to be daycare. And the big pain point with Japan right now is daycare. There's
not enough.
There's like no spots. And I've heard so many actual personal stories from people who had to quit their jobs or couldn't go back to work strictly because they couldn't put their kid in daycare.
Yeah, so maternity leave is over. You can technically go back, but you don't have anywhere to leave your kid. And the 1-year-old is not ready to fend for himself.
So like if you're lucky, then your job may say like, okay, we'll just keep paying you to be on maternity leave or not pay you.
Or work remotely if you're lucky.
Well, so that was kind of like a perk of COVID, was that now that people can work remotely, it changed the kind of conversations about work after a baby. But for a lot of people, there's still this idea of like, oh no, who's going to watch the kid? Period. Your question mark.
Question mark. And the answer is someone has to stay home.
Yeah, somebody has to stay home. And so it turns into people lose half of their income, and then dads have to work longer, and then kids are like not, then you get that whole anime family again where the dad's missing because he's trying to work 2 jobs worth basically, and salaries are stuck in what they've been in the 90s. So it's just like this weird thing. So a lot of people are asking like, why don't people have more babies in Japan? Why don't people? And really, it's a lot of it falls on the mom, and like all the work of it just becomes like the mom's job, and then it becomes almost cripplingly hard to get back to work anyways. So then it's kind of like at that point you're like, okay, so there's no mental health, there's no job help, there's no daycare, and then you're asking me to do this again. Nice joke, dudes.
Yeah. So. And now you have it's in discussion, or has been in discussion with politicians for a long time, and the answer seems to be elusive to them, but every mom knows what needs to be done.
Do you ever see a mom sitting in these
no. The new cabinet has been appointed with absolutely zero
ladies.
Women from 57 appointed cabinet ministers.
It's like it's not that hard, guys, but
do you think there's any change coming at some point, or?
I think there is, because they are targeting daycares recently. Like in Tokyo specifically, they said your second child can now get into daycare for free, so it's cheaper. But that actually makes it a problem because now there's twice as many people getting into daycare. So they're getting closer to where the what do you call that? Like the bottleneck. Yeah. They're getting closer to where the bottleneck is, but they're still not seeing that the issue isn't the money after the fact to the baby. It's
daycare facilities.
It's daycare facilities. Pay for these people to get jobs at daycare, and pay for the families, the husbands. That's more reflective of their actual lifestyles here. So people aren't getting paid enough at their jobs. Like you can throw money in after the fact for children and for families, but the actual issue is like the salaries in Japan aren't enough for people to actually have babies. And that's reflecting now, like people can't afford to be daycare workers. People can't afford to be like a dad or mom. So I'm like, guys, everybody's got a mom. This is a global fact. If you are here, you've got a mom. So why haven't we figured this problem out yet? So anyways.
So what advice with the two births?
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, yeah, if he ever listens to our podcast, that would be great. If with two birth experiences now here in Japan, and some foreign mom or mom-to-be is listening to us, or even Japanese mom-to-be, what advice would you give them before or for their hospital stay, for their post-birth, to go through this whole experience and make it easy or easier on them?
So in English specifically, in the English-speaking world, a lot of people will find that when you Google about birth stuff, pregnancy stuff, kid stuff, most of that information is coming from the States. Most of it's coming from America. And a lot of that is talking about a very American experience that doesn't apply to Japan. So it's nice to be able to kind of like hear about these things in English. But I found that resources from Australia were actually even more helpful, just because it uses like the metric system, or like because it uses like more similar services. But also like you kind of can't rely on the Western style of prep, because what you'll find is that a lot of people focus right now on the stuff you need to get ready for a baby. Like you need just all these things that'll help keep your baby and keep you healthy and safe. And at the end of the day, the one thing you really need, especially when you're abroad, is help. And you're not going to get that from like, this crazy gadget. So what I've found is that I really had wished that I had Googled in Japanese, or that I had found these postpartum helpers, this helper service, or that I had found a meal service, or that I had found a cleaning service, or that I had found a daycare in my city, or if I had found a babysitter. You find that in Japan, okay, I need help watching the baby. In Japan, you can only get help when the baby's 6 months or older. So for those first 6 months, it really is on the mom, hopefully both parents, but it's really on the mom for those first 6 months specifically, because you can't even get help from the city until they're literally 6 months old.
Interesting, because I mean, you would assume that those first 6 months are some of the most difficult, right? Because you just became mom, right?
You're like,
are still figuring out. Yeah.
So the first 3 you can get a helper, but that second batch of 3 is where it gets really hard, because that's usually where dad goes back to work, and if your mom is there, she goes back home or whatever it is. It's that 3 month right there when your baby learns to see and smell, and they notice that you're leaving the room and they start screaming and they go into goblin mode. Like, that's when you start losing your mind. And you're like, now I'm really alone. I've got this like delayed postpartum depression, because now it's really just on me. And so if you could, I would say find a help service for those 3 months, whether it be cleaning, cooking, or even just someone to help you. Like, you can hire a babysitter, but it'll take you about 3 to 4 months to interview and find the right person. So these are things you should do before the baby's here. Like, classes are great, gadgets are great, but interview the help that you'll need for those 3 to 6 months before the baby's here. That would be key, I think.
So basically plan ahead.
Plan ahead for help.
Research, plan.
For help.
And get help.
For people. For 2 hands. You need more hands.
Yes.
I was told that there's like a Mandarin, what's it called? Idiom.
Yeah.
That you need more, like, there's not enough hands. Like, you've run out of hands. So.
Well, you need 2 to hold a baby, so then...
And then what are the other, like, who does all the rest? So, yeah. Lots of help.
That's pretty good advice. How do your days look like now? You said you're back to work and...
I'm really lucky. My work is majority remote, so I'm able to kind of just get, like, I hit a deadline, but I don't need to work 9 to 5 or... As
long as the deadline is hit, you can put in a few hours here, a few hours there. And,
So, and because a lot of things have shifted to phones, I'm able to kind of like, some people are going to like roll their eyes at this, but I'm able to like hold the baby and look at my phone and like make sure that an important email hasn't come in or something like that. But, my days, they are still very baby oriented. But like my son is only 2 months old right now, so he's still very squishy. I'm not in a hurry to put him down quite yet. Yeah. But I am very excited to get back to like YouTube full throttle and everything, because I have so much content that has just been like waiting to be released. I'm just like, oh God, you guys have no idea. Like, this is it.
You did make an announcement a couple of months ago that you have a lot of mountain travel, sea travel.
Yeah, it's like the most gorgeous stuff. And I did all this prep. I had my drone. Like, if you looked up at any point in the last like 3 years, you probably saw my drone going by. It was like, wee. But I have these really great series coming out that are like across the deep, like ooey gooey cool places of Japan, and like talking to people and like dialects and like food. Is just like a really deep look at places that I don't think are getting enough love right now. So I'm so excited to just like get that out there.
Yeah, so are we. We're looking forward to it. Do you have like an estimated time, a date when you plan to release?
I would hope within the next like month or 2, but this year. Yeah, this year
we'll see something.
This year.
Nice.
It's been too long. So get ready.
We are and looking forward to it. I have another question which I didn't ask, and I should have maybe asked at the very beginning, but I've always been curious, and I may have missed an explanation on this. But where did you come up with the name Kemushichan?
Oh God. So this question is actually a proof of how bad my Japanese was. You may have heard hints of it, but I love to eat. Like, I love food. And the hungry caterpillar was like the coolest like little character to me. And, I remember the first word I asked my teacher in school, I was like, how do you say hungry caterpillar in Japanese? Because that's going to be like my AIM screen name. Yeah. I'm going to chat online.
Already decided without knowing what it was like.
I'm just going to do it. And she was like, I think it's like aomushi. It's like, that sounds silly. And she's like, imomushi. It's like, ew, potato bug. It's not that either. And then she's like, maybe kemushi, because it's like kind of furry. And it's like, that sounds cute. I'll go with that. And then I told myself one day I'll be a big butterfly. But I have now learned that kemushi do not become butterflies. They do not become chocho. They become ga. They become moths. And so I'll never be a butterfly. But that's okay because I've actually been looking at moths and they're pretty furry and cute too. So that's what that is.
Well, thank you for sharing the little backstory for your name and also your whole experience with your birth. And do you feel like there's any topic that we didn't touch upon, something important that we may have missed and that you feel like I still want to share this one more thing?
I would just say, like, get help. Plan to get help if you are planning to be a family. But also, epidurals are not what you think they are in Japan. And I don't want to get into the gristle of it all, but do some Googling, read some blogs. But like we kind of touched on earlier, epidurals are not done the same way here. It's like a sports car without the seatbelts, and they are not painless. So anyways, I've been told specifically, mutsu bunben is the word for like painless birth or like epidural. It's not, the doctor said, it's not mutsu. There is pain. There is no not pain. It's just called yoyaku bunben. It's just a scheduled birth. It's not painless. So I was like, oh my God. Like, I was like, why did they say that? It's like misnomered already. But anyway, so yeah, read some blogs. And if people are out there, I would say if you want to DM me or email me or whatever, I'd be very happy.
We'll put all your links to Instagram, your YouTube channel in the description so people can find you.
I've got a soft spot for the moms and dads out there.
We'll send them all your way. But we are happy to take some questions too. If you have, and we can also share them with you.
Yeah.
Jump on your expertise.
I'm ready.
Yeah. Thank you, Loretta, for coming all the way from Tokyo to share this. It was super insightful and I certainly learned a lot. I'll be maybe a little bit more ready for when the day comes.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Good luck to everybody out there.
Yeah, thank you. This was Fish and Rice, Stories from Japan with Loretta, also known as Kemushichan. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We'll see you all next week. Bye.
Oh gosh, is this mom brain? I'm losing my train of thought. I'll fix it in post.
Okay, fix it in post. Pain, angry doctors, difficult experiences.